So you're building AI workflows for $2,000, but consultants are collecting 10K monthly retainers just to babysit those same systems. The brutal truth is that your clients don't want to own AI systems. They want someone else to deal with the chaos so they can focus on what actually matters. Today I'm showing you exactly how to escape the build once and disappear trap so you can make way more money on your first proposal. Let's get into it. The first thing that we need to look into is what actually happens after you deliver something. So let's say you've gone on site and you've built them this shiny tool, but this is what happens over the next 6 months. OpenAI updates models monthly. So the first thing that starts to happen is potentially your prompts stop working or they start to hallucinate. The APIs change without warning, integrations break, so this whole thing that you built magically for them no longer does what they needed to do. Compliance rules shift, so systems become liability risks for companies that have specific compliance requirements. Security gaps start to appear, and this is going to become more and more rampant as AI evolves and all the threats evolve along with the landscape. But the point being is that these data breaches can lead to massive lawsuits. And then finally you get performance degradation. And this is normal in any system because as the updates happen, you aren't doing the most performant thing based on whatever model it is that you're using or any back-end system that's attached to it. And a key takeaway here is that AI is a lot like an expensive pet. It needs constant attention and this thing is going to destroy your house if you don't take care of it. So the first thing that we need to look into is the client's hidden pain that's actually attached to this. And that could be something like 3 a.m. Slack alerts telling them that there's a broken automation or their magical system that you built them no longer works. You could have customer complaints about AI responses gone wrong because somebody asked for help trying to fix their fridge, but instead it told them to go and fuck themselves. And then you have compliance problems because you have people coming to audit businesses. And as part of this now, they're going to be auditing the AI system that you've implemented for them. So if this thing doesn't meet their requirements from whatever standard that they're trying to meet, they're going to lose money on these audits because they're going to have to go and fix all of this as part of a fine or some kind of compliance problem. But then you also have the CFO asking, why is the API all of a sudden costing us twice as much? Or the backend system that's attached to whatever the AI is that you built starting to cost way more money than it actually should. And then finally, nobody internal knows how to fix any of this because when they bought your system, they didn't think, hey, we should actually train someone to understand exactly how all of this works on the back end and the front end. And most of the time, the biggest caveat of all of this is that they don't actually know any of this is going on until it's too late. This is something that I've seen tons of times over the last 10 years because everywhere that I've worked, most of the stuff that I've actually gone in and done for security or cloud stuff has all been related to actually doing maintenance for these people and fixing problems or broken systems that are no longer performant. So I've seen this kind of thing everywhere that I've gone. The one place that I went to, they left on about $45,000 a month worth of cloud services that the developers had switched on just because they thought they needed it but never actually used it. So stuff like this is rampant and it presents a massive opportunity for us because you're going to reframe yourself from being just a builder to a guardian. So what clients think they want is they want this shiny new system and someone to come in and build it for them and then leave. But what they actually need is someone to maintain this over time, someone to guarantee that it actually works forever. So the psychology shift is that you need to stop selling AI workflows and start selling peace of mind to your clients. You need to stop being a contractor that just builds and leaves and start being an insurance policy that prevents disaster. And this is a super powerful mindset change because when you look into the offer that you can actually attach this, you'll see why it's crazy to not do something like it. Clients are going to pay a premium for maintenance because they always do in every form of work that's out there. And that's because downtime costs these people more than the maintenance retainer. A system failure is a ton of immediate revenue lost, along some of the other levers that we're going to speak about soon. But compliance mistakes are massive lawsuits. Regulatory violations, they cost millions, obviously depending on the size of the business. But certain mistakes that are so tiny can cost them millions of dollars. You also have this thing where leaders hate uncertainty. They want to know that they're going to get this thing and that this new shiny system that they have is going to take care of itself, which obviously can't happen unless they pay this retainer or they have someone internal to do it for them. And then finally, you have the competitive advantage. So a working AI means competitive advantage against someone else who has a broken AI. If their system constantly goes down or it's underperforming and things like that, they're not going to stay ahead of their competition who has this amazing system. So let's look at the value stack that you're actually selling to these people. Business continuity insurance. Your system is not going to fail. Risk mitigation. Compliance handled proactively. Cost optimization. API cost decreases over time using more performant models that cost less money. Strategic evolution. Your systems improve continuously and we keep you in the forefront. Executive reporting. You give them reports to show them everything that's going on in their environment. So all the invisible work gets uncovered and put on a pretty dashboard to show them their return on their investment, and also that everything's working as it should. So the key positioning now changes. You're not doing maintenance work, you're mission critical infrastructure. So hopefully at this point you're kind of catching on where I'm going with all of this, and you can finally see the value in doing it. And what I've done here is I put together 5 pillars. Now there are way more things and way more angles that you can actually take, but I think these 5 that I put together are probably going to be the most valuable ones. So the first one is system health monitoring and alerting. No matter what you're doing anywhere in tech, this is one of the most important things, because the business value behind it is that error reduction and risk avoidance equals them saving a ton of time, money, and effort, and all the other things attached to it. So what you're offering these people is 24/7 monitoring with predictive alerts before the failure actually happens. And the ROI on them is that last month I prevented 3 system failures that would have cost $75K in lost sales. My retainer paid for itself 5 times over in one incident. And the client fear that you've addressed behind this is that instead of them finding out their AI system broke directly from their customers, they obviously know about it beforehand so their customers don't get pissed off. And you can build this kind of thing yourself. You could probably tie something into a lovable front end, but there are a few existing systems that can help you do this twice as fast. One of them being Helicone, which is really awesome for performance monitoring and things like that. And then Portkey if you're in a larger system and you want to look at guardrails along with a whole bunch of prompting stuff. Either way, I would check out both of these tools, because no matter what kind of build you're doing for a client, these are going to be super valuable to help you get the job done. So pillar number 2 is performance and cost optimization. And the business value here is that you have cost avoidance and throughput increase. Because again, these models are going to be changing and all of the things that come along with that change as well. And that includes cost. So what we want to offer these people here is continuous tuning for speed, cost efficiency, and quality. Because the better that the systems get, the better quality prompts you can get. And you could probably even make more efficient prompts that are far smaller and therefore cost less money. So an ROI example is I reduced your API cost by 8K monthly while improving response speed by 60%. That's 96K in annual savings. And with these kind of things, what you want to do is once you've done this once, you want to make sure that you get some form of case study, because all of these metrics will be embedded in your next sale, which makes it twice as easy, because you can show these people how pillar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 did a whole bunch of stuff for your clients historically. So the client fear that we're addressing here is that runaway costs and slow systems can destroy whatever it is that they're doing, their product, their system, their internal ops. So by having you around to focus on pillar 2, you're going to prevent all of that stuff from happening. And the tools here are Prometheus and Helicone again. Now, for those of you who don't know what Prometheus is, it's essentially an IDE, but specifically for prompting. And what you can do is you can dive into the tool, you can put in a system prompt and a user prompt. You can see how much it costs, how much time it took to run, and a whole bunch of other metrics. I'll do a deep dive into that tool in another video, but for this one, I just want to focus on what we're doing here. Then the third pillar is security and compliance management. This one's going to be massive because all the tools that have already been implemented, they're in no way secure because most of the people implementing them have never done anything like this before. And that's just step 1. The other part is that as the landscape evolves, so many threats are going to become rampant, not just in the back-end software, but in the actual processes that have been built. So the business value here is obvious. It's risk avoidance. This is the primary lever because risk is directly tied to massive costs, especially if you're working for mid-market or enterprise clients. They have massive amounts of monetary loss if any of these things happen. So what you're offering these people is proactive security audits and regulatory compliance. Whatever system you build for them will not just help monitor that, but it will help prevent these kinds of things happening. So the ROI example here is you avoided a potential 500K GDPR fine by updating data handling before new regulations took effect. And the client fear addressed is that data breaches and regulatory violations will cost you a shitload of money if you don't focus on them. So the tools you can use here are going to be organization specific. Now, again, if you're working for a smaller client, they're probably going to have their own system, but it would be a lot easier for you to build something for them. Whereas if you're working in the mid-market to enterprise client, they're definitely going to have their own systems and it will probably be tied into something that their own internal security team has. If they don't have that, you can obviously look at solutions for them and work alongside their security architect. But ideally, the most important thing that you should remember is that you should always be baking security into whatever you build. Because just with all of these pillars, if you're going in there and you're building these guys a system up front, you've done the original work for them, which means that if anything breaks, you're held accountable for that. And you're going to look pretty shitty in their eyes if the thing that you built them causes any of these problems in the first place. So make sure that you understand the environment that you're working in. Make sure you understand their needs and how their systems function. And then part of your build, you bake the security in. That's going to help prevent these kinds of things. Then we get on to pillar 4, which is future-proofing and strategic updates. So this is an amazing thing because it attaches to conversion lift and competitive advantage. Now, competitors who are on point, they're always going to be evolving alongside the landscape. And that's what you want to position yourself as doing when you're trying to sell pillar number 4. You're selling continuous capability upgrades and model optimization. So the ROI example here is that you upgraded to the latest models, which resulted in 15% better lead qualification, adding 200K quarterly revenue. That's a pretty amazing thing that you can attach to something. And the client fear that you want to address here is that you don't want them to fall behind competitors using newer AI. Pretty straightforward. So the tools that you can use here, you can have news feeds on big AI improvements. Obviously, you need to have some form of system that is keeping you up to date and the client, and ideally within their domain. So if they're in healthcare, you need to find out what the latest thing is in healthcare. If they're in sales, then obviously you find out the latest things that are happening within the sales domain. Stuff like that. Maybe even sales within healthcare. Basically find out exactly what it is that they're doing and make sure that you're getting the latest news on that. And then again, you can use tools like Prometheus and Portkey so that you can find out how their systems are running, what kind of prompts have been written, and make them as performant as possible based on the new models. Portkey will also help you with any APIs that change. Again, maybe they're using OpenRouter or something like that. But the point being, your most valuable tool over here is actually just staying up to date, because you're not going to know to do any of these things or make any changes if you aren't aware that these things are actually evolving. Then we get on to the final pillar, which is pillar number 5, user adoption and training programs. And this is arguably the most important thing on any phase of any journey that you're doing with AI. Because if no user adopts the thing that you're doing, no one's going to use your tool, which means they don't get any ROI and you look terrible in the eyes of a client. So if I'm doing an audit, I'm going to make sure that in my audit, I've found out who the people are that are easily adoptable and who are really difficult at adopting this thing. So if I'm going into a business, I'm going to start off with my audit. Then I'm going to do the implementation of whatever system it is that they want. Then I'm going to train their team. And as part of that, I'm going to do user adoption. And then I'm going to go into this maintenance phase that we're talking about now. But even though I do the team training and the user adoption in the phase before this, when it comes down to the monthly retainer, you still offer it as part of your service because new people are going to come into the business. But you also need to make sure that the people you trained previously, they're actually starting to use the systems and you're monitoring them using it. So the business value here is that they get throughput increase plus error reduction, because the more people that use it, the more throughput they get. But the better they are at using it, the less errors they are, which means the business actually makes more money because more people are using this amazing tool, but they save money because they're less error prone. So what you're offering these people is ensuring humans actually use the AI systems effectively. The ROI example here is that you increase team adoption from 30% to 85%, equivalent to hiring 2 additional staff members without payroll costs. So the client fear addressed is that expensive systems sit around unused. And no matter what tool you use in any organization, this thing happens. If you haven't watched my change adoption video, you really need to go and do that now so you can understand the importance of client psychology and how to actually speak to these people to get them to adopt your tools. And the tools that you're going to use for this are your framework, the framework which you can grab from that video that I just mentioned, but also surveys on Typeform. Now that sounds super boring and simple, but Typeform can be automated. And it's anonymous. So you can have people giving feedback, telling you either what's wrong with your system or why they don't want to adopt it, what their fears are, things like that. They can do it anonymously. You can automate all of that into a form that you understand and rank, and then you can address their fears that way. Apart from doing a whole bunch of other things obviously attached to that. But the point being is that you really need to understand the client psychology. And then you need to bake in the user adoption into your 5-pillar sales thing that you're doing for maintenance. So if you stuck around this long, well done you. We're almost done. Now I want to get you onto value-based pricing, because you should never price on time. So just like we had 5 pillars of things that you can sell, we now have 5 levers that we can use for value-based pricing. And the first one is time saved. Everybody knows this one. Maintenance context. I free up your team from firefighting broken AI so they can focus on revenue activities. And the ROI calculation behind this, 40 hours saved weekly, 100K in annual value in productivity. So that's pretty straightforward. Lever number 2 is error reduction. In the maintenance context, you're preventing AI mistakes before they reach customers. The ROI example is you stopped 5 bad AI responses, monthly saves 50K in customer recovery costs. This is a super important one because error reduction, whether it's from an employee or whether it's from a system, can cost a business a ton of money. So if you can tie these two together, just by themselves, you're already putting yourself up there to get some amazing value-based pricing. But we can go further. Lever 3, throughput increase. In the maintenance context, optimized systems process more with the same resources. So the ROI example here is tuning increased processing from 100 to 250 requests daily, equivalent to hiring 2.5 FTEs. So you can see why that is super important. And generally, you can easily attach this to a sales team. So instead of them having to hire 2 extra salespeople, you show them how whatever the system is that you built not only saves them time and reduces errors, but also massively increases their throughput by doing something like all of their automated lead gen or prospecting and things like that. Then we get on to lever 4, the conversion lift. The maintenance context. Better AI performance equals better business results. Pretty straightforward. An ROI example of this, 2% improvement in AI-driven lead qualification equals 500K in additional annual revenue. Super straightforward. Everybody understands this straight away. Then we get on to lever 5, risk and cost avoidance. In the maintenance context, insurance against catastrophic failure and compliance violations. And the ROI example is avoiding 1 compliance violation, which is a 500K fine, pays for 3 years of retainers. So this one's super powerful, especially if you have a mid-market client or an enterprise client, because they're going to have massive costs tied to any form of risk. But this also works for smaller businesses, so don't get put off if you're not at an enterprise client or something like that. The point being is that whatever risks you uncover for these people, make sure that you paint this massive picture so that you can attach as much value to it as possible, because the more this risk costs them, the more valuable it is to them, in which case the more valuable you are to them. Cool. So now that we have these 5 levers of value and we know exactly what to price ourselves on, we need some form of tiered structure so that we can offer a retainer to someone. Now, I'm not saying that these 3 things are gospel and that you have to do them exactly. Obviously, depending on the size of your client, how much social proof you have, and how good you are at marketing yourself, those are all going to come into play here when you're trying to price accordingly. But I've given you just a 3-step ladder of what you can offer clients. So the first thing is going to be a bronze tier. And that would be something like 8K a month, where you offer the monitoring and basic fixes plus monthly reporting. So you're just giving them some form of observability, exposure into whatever's going on in the back end and some reporting for their exec team to understand what their investment has brought them. Plus you'll do some fixes if anything comes to light. Then you get onto the silver tier, which is going to be 10K a month. And that adds optimization, training, and quarterly reviews. So you add in all the stuff from the bronze tier, but you add in these few things for 2K extra value. And then finally, the gold is going to be 15K a month. And that's full strategic partnership. So you have executive reporting at its full level now, baked into all of the 5 pillars that we spoke about, plus the proactive evolution. Now, the reason that you want to have these 3 tiers priced so intelligently is that because 8K for what they get looks kind of okay. And then if they just paid you that little 2K extra, they get a whole bunch of more value. And then people who have a ton of money, they're just going to take gold because it's a no-brainer for them. So the strategy behind this is that you need to make sure that you priced accordingly, but the stuff that you're offering always makes them land at least in the middle. You don't really want all of your clients going for the bronze thing, because then your offer is far too good in the bronze tier, or it's not strong enough in one of the higher tiers to get them to take one of those things. The point being is that you always want to try and get clients on either the middle tier or, best case scenario, up on your gold tier. And again, you can do that by playing with the 5 pillars and the 5 levers to manipulate their perception into getting whatever you want. Fantastic. So now that we have this 3-tier retainer structure, if you have any questions about it, drop them in the comments below. But we need to help transition your current clients, because some of you might already have clients that you sold a tool to and then you just wandered off into the jungle. But you need to go back to those people, because if you did an amazing job for them, they already know who you are, which means that the trust is established. And you can go back to them and now upsell this thing to them. So they know you did a good job, which means that the sell is way easier to them. You just need to make this new pain clearer to them. So map their exact future pains based on the system that they have now. Everybody thinks that once they get this new tool or they get this thing, all their problems magically go away. But it actually does the exact opposite. It branches out like 5 new problems. And it's the same with anything in life. Think about a time where you got something and all of a sudden you were like, oh shit, well now I have to monitor this and I have to look at this and I have to do this. It's the same thing for your clients. You built them this tool, but as we've seen in this entire presentation, they still have all of these new problems that have now presented themselves. And you need to map that. Super simple audit can do that for them, no problem. You built a tool, which means you understand their environment already and you understand the problems that come along with your tool and AI as a whole. And then finally, what you need to do is show them what that's going to cost them if they don't act. So you can see why this is so easy for existing clients. They already trust you, they know you, so there's no really hard barrier to get in front of these people. You built the system yourself, which means you're already aware of all the problems that come from the landscape and from the tool that you built them. And you can show them how much it costs them because you already have some form of ROI from scoping the tool initially for them. So then you just give them a new path. It's that simple. Hey, I did this thing for you. These are going to be the new challenges that you're going to face. This is what I would do if I were you so that you don't run into any of these problems. And then you just attach it to any of the 3 tiers monthly retainer. You show them exactly what they get for each of them. And that's it. It's really straightforward, guys. Now, if I'm selling to new prospects, that's going to change completely because I'm not just going to go in there and sell them maintenance. Obviously, you can if you want to be the guy who has like 5 clients on a maintenance retainer. That's an easy 50K if they're just on your middle tier. But if you're trying to do the full picture transformation and this is just the final part of it, which is something I'd recommend, then you want to go in there with new clients. You start with your audit or strategic roadmap to give them a path to where they want to go. Then you build all of their stuff for them. Then you train their team and then you maintain their business. So it's a 4-step process. And the position is that you don't just build the tools, you are strategic partners for their entire AI journey. And there's far more money in doing that. That's the path I am taking with any clients that I bring on for AI. But equally, if you wanted to, you could pick any of these. If you just wanted to be the guy who went in and built them strategic roadmaps, cool. That you can easily do for 10 to 20K, again, depending on the size of the client, even up to 60 or 70K if you get mid-market and enterprise. And then you build whatever it is that they want. Now, I would never recommend just building someone something. To me, that's silly. I'm either going to do the audit and the build, or I'm going to do the build and then the maintenance. Point being, you can play around with this. But don't forget that one of the most critical things are going to be the adoption. If nobody adopts anything that you're doing in the business, nothing you do in the business actually matters. So let's get into a few closing statements before we leave here. You're already doing all the hard work by building these AI systems, but you're leaving money on the table by walking away. There is so much money to be had after you've actually delivered the first tool that you built them or whatever system you did for these people. And this is something that I've done over the last 12 years. Cybersecurity, and in cloud, DevOps, all of that kind of stuff. I've gone in there on a 3-week contract to implement something and then upsold onto this maintenance thing. And it would turn into 6-month, 1-year, 2-year, 3-year rolling contracts, which netted me millions of dollars over those years. And a lot of the time, you can ultimately end up shifting your own time away from this. So once you get a system, say you have a client who's paying you 10K a month, you know exactly how their systems work, how their organization works as a whole. You can bring in a contractor if you don't want to hire perm, and they can come and do the work for you on behalf of the client. So there are tons of different models that you can put behind this to even decouple your own time. But if you're the guy who gets rid of the risk and the errors and all the other stuff that a lot of people don't even think about, you're going to be the one who makes a ton of money. Because the difference between someone who gets paid 5K a month and someone who gets 25K a month recurring, it's not a technical skill. It's literally understanding that clients don't want these kinds of problems anymore. They don't want to deal with it themselves, and half of them aren't even aware that they have them. So now that you're aware of them and you have a model to attach to this, you can easily go out there and differentiate yourself from a tool builder. You're now a consultant who takes care of these problems. You become mission critical infrastructure for them. And that's a massive consulting piece. So I hope this video was super valuable to you. Leave some comments below. I'll get back to any questions you might have. Otherwise, check out the videos on the screen now. They will definitely help you on your journey to becoming an AI consultant. Or you can check out my community where I've distilled 10 years worth of consulting experience for everyone from mid-market startups up to enterprise into something that will help you get where you want to go as fast as possible. I'll see you guys in the next video.